Am I the jerk for forgiving my wife's affair? This question haunts me every day. I wouldn't say I regret my decision, but something inside still feels unsettled. This story isn't one of those simple ones where everything can be neatly categorized. It turned out to be much more complicated than I ever imagined. When I first found out that my wife Sarah had been with another man, we've been married for 6 years, and I always thought our relationship was solid. Did we have problems? Sure, like any couple. Over the past year, though, we started drifting apart. Arguments about money, disagreements over how we spent our free time, and my relentless work schedule didn't help. Sarah often told me she felt neglected. I'd listen and promise to do better, then dive right back into my tasks. Deep down, I thought these were just temporary issues. The day everything changed started like any other. I got up early to finish a client presentation, ate my usual breakfast, coffee and peanut butter toast, and headed to work. Sarah seemed upset that morning, but I didn't pay it much attention. Work stress, I thought. After lunch, I got an unusual call. It was Jake, my coworker. He sounded hesitant. "Are you home right now?" he asked. "No, I'm at work." "Why?" I replied, sensing something strange in his voice. Probably nothing. It's just, I saw your wife at that restaurant on Pine Street, but she wasn't alone." It sounded odd, but I brushed it off. Who knows who she might have been with? A colleague, a friend. Still, the thought lingered. I decided to call her. Sarah didn't pick up. On my way home, I remembered Jake's call and detoured to Pine Street. The restaurant was nearly empty, and I felt a little relieved until I saw her car in the parking lot. Why hadn't she mentioned she was having lunch here? Why didn't she return my call? I sat in my car, torn about what to do. Maybe I was overthinking it. Or maybe I decided to wait. About 20 minutes later, I saw Sarah walk out of the restaurant with a man I didn't recognize. They were laughing. She touched his arm briefly before they got into separate cars and drove off. I went home in a daze. Should I confront her? Accuse her of something I wasn't even sure about? Maybe it was just a work meeting. But then why the laughter? The gesture? When she got home, I casually asked how her day was. She hesitated for a moment, then quickly composed herself. "Just a regular day. Stayed late at work," she said, not even blinking. That night I couldn't sleep. Something in her voice, in that small, almost imperceptible lie, gnawed at me. That was when my doubts began to solidify. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Instead, I resolved to uncover the truth. I started paying closer attention to her behavior. She often texted while avoiding eye contact or left the room to take phone calls. One evening, when she was in the shower, her phone lit up on the nightstand. A message had come through from an unsaved number. "See you tomorrow, baby." I froze. It could have been anything, but I already knew it wasn't a coincidence. I couldn't bring myself to confront her immediately. Instead, I started noticing more details. Sarah began coming home later than usual, blaming work overload. On weekends, she often left the house under the pretext of meeting friends, though those meetings had never taken so long before. I felt the anger boiling inside me. One evening, when she said she was going to meet colleagues, I decided to follow her. It felt disgusting, hiding in my car like some spy. She drove to a small, inconspicuous hotel on the outskirts of town. I parked at a distance, trying not to draw attention, and saw her go inside. A few minutes later, the same man I had seen at the restaurant parking lot arrived. They weren't even trying to hide. He put his arm around her shoulders, and they walked in together. I sat in my car for over an hour, torn between the urge to burst in and get answers and the overwhelming disbelief that this was happening to me, to us. When Sarah came home, I was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of cold coffee. She walked in, took off her coat, and smiled at me as if nothing had happened. "How was your meeting?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Exhausting. We spent the whole evening discussing plans for the next quarter," she said, reaching for a glass of water. That lie pushed me over the edge. "Sarah, do you think I'm an idiot?" I said, looking her straight in the eyes. She froze, the glass still in her hand. "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the photo I had taken from my car outside the hotel. It was a picture of her in the man's arms. Her face changed. Firstly, she went pale. Then her expression turned desperate. "It's not what you think," she said quickly. "Not what I think. Sarah, I saw you walk into that hotel with him. Are you seriously going to deny it?" She covered her face with her hands and started crying. I had never seen her like that before. Through her sobs, she said, "It was a mistake. I got confused. It started when we began drifting apart. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My first instinct was to explode, scream at her, and throw her out of the house. But instead, I just sat there silently, feeling like my entire world was collapsing around me. She begged me to listen, said it didn't mean anything, and she wanted to fix everything. I said nothing. That night, she slept on the couch. I stayed in our bedroom, trying to figure out what to do next. The morning started with heavy silence. Sarah tried to talk to me, but I avoided any interaction. All I could do was go to work, bury myself in reports, and try to distract myself. But the thoughts of what had happened wouldn't let me go. By lunchtime, I realized I couldn't handle this alone. I called my best friend, Mark. We've been friends since school, and he's always been the person I turn to for advice in tough situations. "You won't believe what happened," I started. "Try me," he replied, sensing it was serious. I told him everything from spotting her car at the restaurant to her coming home after the hotel meeting. Unlike me, Mark didn't stay silent. "Are you serious? And you haven't kicked her out yet?" he said, sounding almost outraged. "I don't know what to do, Mark. It's not that simple. I love her." "Love her? Does she love you?" "Love isn't just words, man. It's actions too." His words hit me hard. I knew he was right. Sarah had betrayed me, broken our trust, and no excuses could change that. But I couldn't just walk away. When I got home, Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. "I found a marriage counselor," she said without looking up. "I scheduled us for a session." "And what are you trying to prove with this?" I asked coldly. "I want to fix this." Her voice trembled, but there was determination in it. "I know what I did, and I'm willing to fight for us." I smirked. "Fight? You already made your choice." Sarah looked at me, and in her eyes I saw something new. Not just guilt, but determination. "Listen, I know what I did was awful, but I don't want to live like this anymore. I need you to know, you're the only one who matters to me." The next few days were strange. We barely talked. I took a day off to be alone and think things through. Sarah tried to act normal, but her tense glances and attempts to make conversation said otherwise. Everything changed on Friday night. I left my phone on the kitchen counter, and when I came back, I noticed her screen lighting up with a notification. On her Messenger app, there was a name I had never seen before and a short text: "Please read this message till the end." Normally, I wouldn't read someone else's messages, but this time I couldn't resist. Sarah had written, "This is the end. Don't message me again. I need to save my family, and I've already realized how badly I messed up." I locked the screen and sat down at the kitchen table, feeling a strange sense of relief. That message was a confirmation of her words, but would it be enough to trust her again? When Sarah came home from work, I decided it was time to talk. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, and I finally asked the question that had been tormenting me from the beginning: why? She stayed silent for a long time before answering. "I felt lonely. You were always busy. I wanted warmth, attention. It was wrong, but back then I thought I couldn't cope otherwise." I listened, but all I felt inside was anger. "That's your excuse? It's my fault you cheated?" Sarah shook her head. "No, it's not an excuse. I just want you to know it wasn't because I don't love you. I made a mistake." Sarah's words hung in the air, as if she expected me to forgive her immediately. But I stayed silent. Chaos raged inside me, and I didn't know what to do with it. "Do you even understand how deeply you've betrayed me?" I finally said. "You destroyed everything we built." Sarah nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I understand. I just want to ask for a chance. One chance to prove I can fix this." Part of me wanted to throw her out right then and there. But another part, the one that still loved her, made me stop. Instead of answering, I stood up and left the house, leaving her alone in the kitchen. I spent the entire night sitting in my car in an empty supermarket parking lot. I thought about what life without her would look like, about how pathetic I felt for even considering staying. But love is a strange thing. It makes you justify things you'd never forgive in anyone else. The next day, I decided we needed a neutral conversation. Marriage counseling wasn't exactly an idea I was excited about, but I agreed to go. If it could at least help me figure out whether this marriage was worth fighting for, why not try? At the first session, the therapist, a middle-aged woman with a gentle voice, asked us to share our feelings. Sarah spoke about how deeply she regretted her actions, about how she had lost herself and was searching for something she felt was missing. "But I realized I was looking in the wrong place," she added. When it was my turn, I stayed silent for a long time, struggling to find the words. Finally, I said, "I'm not sure I can trust again." It was the truth. I could feel her regret, see her efforts, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that evening replay in my mind. The hotel, the man, her laughter. Weeks of therapy passed. Sarah did everything to show her commitment. She stayed home, cut all ties with the man, and openly shared her phone with me. But I knew the wound was still too fresh. One evening, she approached me while I was sitting in the living room. "I know time isn't enough to heal everything," she said, "but I want you to know, I'm not giving up." I looked at her. "I'm not giving up either. But that doesn't mean I forgive you right now. I need time." Sarah nodded as if she expected this. And that was the start of something new. Months passed. We slowly rebuilt our relationship. But here's what I realized. Forgiveness is a process. It's not one decision, but a series of small steps. Looking back now, I wonder, was I right to stay? Or was I a fool for trying to salvage something that was already broken? What do you think? Can trust truly be rebuilt after infidelity, or is it just an illusion?